Hey guys, how's everyone doing? Welcome back to Harry's Highlights. On this video, we're going to talk about the book Principles by Dalio. Now, this is all about basically a guide to decision making. Now, what I want to talk about here is some of the major principles that I got from this that I want to share with you guys. Now, one of the bigger philosophies in this is about understanding that you can almost argue that the quality of your life is dependent on the quality of your decisions. Great example of this is, if you have low quality decisions, you're probably going to have a low quality life. Other people that have high quality decisions are probably going to have a high quality life. Now, that's not to say that the choice of decisions is easy or hard. It's about the quality of them. There's plenty of times where you could have an easier decision, which would mean that it would be like lower quality, but you can also have a harder decision that also means higher quality. And it's understanding that it's removing the feelings out of the decision making and base it on the logic of quality is based on good or bad. It's black and white. There's not, it's good but I don't like it, or it's good but I like it. It's based on the category of good and bad. And what this talks about understanding is that, like, you can almost relate. Someone who has a high quality life or has achieved a lot has made a lot of high quality or successful decisions. So understanding that there's basically, he talks about there's a few processes in this one. He wants to understand that one of the biggest parts of the book, or that he starts with, is explaining and understanding that you need to embrace reality and deal with it. It's basically understanding that there's going to be good things that are going to happen to you, there's going to be bad things that happen to you. It's about controlling the controllables though. You'll have things that happen to you day and night, week on, week off, that there will be things that will happen, and the best thing you can do is face them head on, not avoid them, and basically understand that, look, this is part of my reality. I need to embrace it, deal with it, and move through it. Too often, too many people see a problem or see something that happens and they try to move away from it, try to avoid it. And unfortunately, you can understand how that, based on decision making, black and white, not whether you like it or dislike it, would be a low quality decision. Because by moving away from that, not moving through it, that problem is still going to be there. It's about imagining if you have a roadblock. You're going down a street, there's a roadblock there. If you try to walk backwards, you try to walk away from it, anytime you come back, that roadblock will still be there. So it's the same thing with understanding this one, that, like, you need to embrace it, go, yeah, there is a roadblock there, and I'm going to deal with it by either going through it, under it, or over it. But by walking away from it, it allows it to remain. And it's understanding about that, like, what you can control is you can't control whether it's there or not. So but you can control how you react to it. So you can't always control the things that happen to you in life, but how you respond or the decisions you make around them or towards them is in your control. So it's about understanding that when these things happen, the best thing you can do is basically move through pain instead of away from it. See, unfortunately, too many people feel pain or experience some sort of pain or discomfort and then immediately back away or move around or try to get away from it. Where this is understanding that, like, this guide to decision making is understanding that, unfortunately, there is going to be pain in everything we do to some degree in some form. But it's about how do we move through it? How do we deal with it in the most effective way? And effective doesn't always mean I like it or I dislike it. It's about black and white, whether it's effective or ineffective. It's logic-based, not emotion-based. And the understanding of this guide to decision making is about basically looking at things with logic. And understanding that he basically talks about a 5-step process. So this 5-step process is to do with understanding that you need to have clear-cut goals. With a lot of things we talk about, it's always about having the target, always about having the idea of where we're going. So when you look at goals, you basically understand it's like, here's what I want to achieve. You know, there might be hopes, there might be wishes, but it's still at the very least a target of where you want to go. If you don't know where the target is, if you don't know what you're aiming for, it's hard to hit the target, right? It's like giving yourself a guideline, that you're going to work towards. So that's the first step in the process. The second step is identifying problems. So you need to work out or highlight what the problems are, and then the third step of that one is then diagnose them. So the root of why that problem is happening. So whatever it might be a lack of discipline. It might be things that happen outside of your control. It might be things that, like, there were poor decisions you made. Whatever they may be, you need to identify the problem and then diagnose it, what it is specifically. Whether you like it or not like it, it doesn't matter. It's about identifying in a logical way. Black and white, this is what the problem is, and here's the possible plan that I'm going to put towards, which is basically the last step, which is about designing the problem. Designing a process that's going to help you overcome all of it. So that 5-step process, you have the goals, you identify the problems, you diagnose the root of the problem, and then you work out how you're going to basically overcome it. then you make the decision to do whatever it takes to make that happen. And that is the part that a lot of people struggle with. They might get through the first 4. They go, yeah, this is the goal I want. This is the possible problems. This is why that problem has happened. Here's how I should fix it, but it's probably too hard for me to do. It's like, it's a really good solution, but it's going to require more effort than I'm willing to put in. It's a really good solution, but it would require more time than I'm willing to put in. It's like, I'd really like to do that, but that's going to require more effort than I'm prepared to put in. And that's the problem that he says, is that when you get to the 5th part of the process, it's that the execution, or the amount of time required to execute, is where the problems happen, why the problems don't get fixed. So the other takeaway he talked about in there was understanding how you need to be radically open-minded. You need to basically it takes conscious effort to be radically open-minded, because it's basically where you have to drop your ego. You basically have to completely release your ego and look at things with logic. See, part of your ego comes from your amygdala, which is a part of your reptilian brain, which is very sort of that fight or flight. It's really about looking at things that, like, whether you like it or don't like it. Very emotional based. With the benefit of what humans are nowadays, we have the ability to look at things with logic and reasoning and basically more in-depth comprehension of things. It's not so much about like, that was painful, I just avoid it. Now it's about, it's painful, but if I go through it, what would happen afterwards? Forward projection. So being radically open-minded gets easier with time. So yes, you have to be conscious of it, and it's like a muscle. It's something that you practice and you get better at. And over time, it'll sort of become like second nature. Just like anybody who's done anything or got really great at anything at all, they practice at it. They put deliberate hours of practice, and they eventually became better and better until it became a skill that they were basically mastered. Now, with radically open-minded, about being conscious, putting conscious effort into it, it's about you have to focus on, instead of focusing on being right, you have to focus on the truth. Even if that means that you're wrong. You have to build the criteria around that. Whenever it comes to this decision, I'm going to focus on what is right. That disregards your feelings of whether you like it or dislike it, whether it means that you're right or whether it means that you're wrong, whether it means it's going to be painful or whether it's going to be pleasurable. It's purely about the foundation of that criteria needs to be whether it's right, or whether it's so truthful. Because when you can make a decision based on that one, you're then looking at it purely through logic, and then you're purely looking at it based on objection and what is best for making that decision or whatever result you're trying to achieve. It's not based on that, I want to climb this mountain, but it's going to take me 6 hours and I don't want to walk further than 5 hours. It's like, you're making that decision based on what you like, not based on what's needed to achieve the goal. And that's what he talks about, is that like, it's very, very difficult to have that sort of focus on being truthful and being able to focus on something purely based on the truth and disregarding your ego. It's like, if I admit that, I would mean I'm wrong, and that's painful, and I want to avoid pain. It's about understanding that's truthful and I'm wrong, and even though that's painful for me to admit, by moving through it, I'm becoming a better person because I'm making decisions based on the truth, not based on what I want. Too many people it's called cognitive dissonance, where you basically refuse to believe something because that would shake up your beliefs. It would change the way that you identify. It would change the way that you see things. And too many people go like, well, I would prefer to be in my bubble where things are the way that I want them than to burst that bubble and grow. And that's when it talks about when it comes to decision making, you need to be able to be an effective leader, to be effective basically in just living life. You need to be able to create a criteria way that you can understand that here's the goal I want to achieve, here's what I need to make it happen, and I need to disregard whether I'm right or wrong about it. I just need to focus on what needs to be done to make it happen. Now, it's about, to do that also requires thoughtful, productive disagreements, not emotionally charged, arguments. It's about understanding that, look, I understand that this is probably going to radically challenge your beliefs or the things that you see, your views. But understand that I'm not here to disrupt that. I'm here to shine a light or highlight the truth. Not whether you're wrong or whether you're right, purely the truth of the matter. And the truth doesn't care if you're right, whether you're wrong, all that matters is that it's factual. It's the truth. It's based on logic, not on emotion. And to have those thoughtful, productive disagreements can be like difficult for some people. Because a lot of people, it's another form of discomfort, another form of pain. It's another form of negativity that people don't want to experience. But understanding that going through it makes you both better people. One, because you've been able to maturely handle emotion, and they've also been able to have the right course corrections in their thinking. The next principle he talks about there is that everyone is wired differently. Sure, some of us are wired differently physically. Sure, some might be better suited at like long distance running, some might be better suited at weightlifting. But there also is, people are wired differently mentally. Some people might look at a situation or problem and see nothing but creative solutions. Others might see the same problem and see nothing but logical solutions. And the difference is that neither one is right or wrong. They're just wired differently. So long as that they're moving through the problem and getting to the same result without causing any harm, without doing any damage. The focus needs to be on, are they going to achieve the result? Sure, there might be different guidelines, there might be different sort of rules and regulations to making it happen. But ultimately, are they achieving the right result? And that's understanding that just because somebody's process is different to yours doesn't mean it's wrong. Provided that it genuinely isn't wrong. Some people have a different belief system, and they might think that some extreme, harmful decisions are acceptable. And then you'll know that logically, and you following that principles of decision making, that logically, is it being harmful? Is it right? Is it wrong? And then that might be basing on that way. Yes, they might be wrong. But sometimes some people might just have a slower decision making process or process that they achieve something. They might just have like a different preparation style. But if they're still going to achieve the same result without causing any harm, then that's where it requires maturity and understanding that people are wired differently. And that just because the way you see something, you might see something faster or slower than somebody else, doesn't mean that you're right and they're wrong, or vice versa. It's about understanding that just as people have different physical attributes, people have different mental attributes. And then taking that into account is how you need to be aware when you're making decision making. That so long as they're within the right guidelines of things, then they're not wrong. They're just different. The last one there is about understanding how to make decisions effectively. This is probably why I think it's put last, is because it's a bit of a mind shift, a bit of a paradigm shift. It's about understanding that you need to look at things with a criteria in mind. If anyone remembers back in school when we had a criteria for when we get our work marked, that this was a criteria for an A, this was a criteria for a B, this was a criteria for a C. Understanding that wasn't based on whether the teacher liked you, disliked you. That wasn't based on whether you showed up for this many hours of school or this many hours of school. It's based on the work that did it fall into this category, did it fall into this category, did it fall into this category. Having that same criteria making a decision, it completely negates both right or wrong, both like or dislike. It logically looks at it as basically, is it truthful, is it not truthful? And understanding when you have a criteria to make a decision, it's like, here's the result I want, here's what needs to be happen. And if it's like, yeah, but if I'm prepared to get from point A to point B, it's going to take 100 steps, but I'm only prepared to walk 50. Well, the criteria needs to be on what needs to happen to make that, to me to walk 100 steps, to me to get to point A to point B. I need to walk 100 steps. So my criteria is, I need to walk 100 steps. My criteria isn't, what do I feel like walking? It's no, to get to point A to point B, it requires this. And it's like, if you look at math, 1 + 1 = 2. And it's not, but I don't like it equaling 2. I want it to equal 16. It's like, that doesn't matter. The criteria is 1 + 1 = 2. It doesn't matter your decision on how you feel about it. The decision is based on the truth. That's what it talks about, this criteria with making decisions effectively. It's about understanding that to have a solid foundation on decision making, the right principles to make effective decisions, high quality decisions, you need to have a criteria that's rock solid. That the teacher, when she marked our work, regardless whether she liked you or not, if it didn't fall in that criteria, she couldn't give C work an A. Because when it'd be reviewed, it'd be like, well, this doesn't fall in the criteria of an A. It doesn't matter whether you liked them or not. Their criteria is unbiased. And that's how you need to make decisions. I need to achieve this. What needs to be done to make that happen? Not, I don't know if I feel like doing that much, or I don't know if that's worth my time or anything. It doesn't matter. You need to make the decision effectively. You need to make it with a criteria in mind. And then you look at the criteria, and whatever falls outside of that criteria falls outside of that criteria. It should be negated. And if you can follow all that one, that's how you can understand how to make decisions more effectively. So to summarize quickly, we talked about that principles is all about your guide to decision making. It's about understanding that you can argue the quality of your life is dependent on the quality of your decisions. That you need to understand that you need to embrace reality and deal with it. There are going to be problems that come up, and the most effective thing you can do is to deal with them, understand them, and overcome them. Understanding the 5-step process that it's about controlling the controllables. So you set up goals, you ID the problems, you diagnose what the root of the problem is, you design a solution for that problem, and then you decide to implement whatever it takes to make that result happen. Not what you feel, it's like this is the decision made on the criteria based on what it's going to require to make that decision happen. Then I talked about being radically open-minded. Not just open-minded, but radically open-minded. So this is where it's quite extreme, but it doesn't mean that you don't have resolve. It means that you're open to other possibilities. Understanding that requires conscious effort because it means you're going to have to release your ego. You have to be prepared to take a few hits. Understanding that instead of focus on being right, you have to focus on the truth. And that can mean sometimes more often than we're prepared to admit that we're going to be wrong. But it's about releasing that ego and understanding at the end of the day, is it right though? It's not about whether I like it or not. Is it truthful? And then understanding that requires thoughtful, productive disagreements, which is another form of negativity or another form of uncomfortableness. But the maturity comes from moving through it. And each time you do it, you'll get better at it. And it's not about engaging in an emotionally charged battle, verbal disagreement. It's purely about thoughtful and productive dialogue. About understanding that I completely understand where you're coming from. But what I want to add to that is that course correction. Highlighting this where it's wrong. That regardless of that one, factually, this is what's true. Then I explained about everyone is wired differently, mentally and physically. And focusing on that understanding that sometimes people have a different process, that doesn't mean it's wrong. Factually, if they're still going to get to the same result, then it's fine. The last one there is about understanding to make decisions effectively, you need to create and design a rock-solid criteria. You don't move outside of that criteria, and as long as you focus on all of those things, all these philosophies, if you can embody all these philosophies, you'll have a great understanding of principles and be able to implement your guide to decision making. Now, we're making a lot more of these videos for this training series to help you with your personal development goals. That's all for now though. So until next time, leave a comment below on what you like the most and look forward to sharing more with you in the next episode of Harry's Highlights.